Hello and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick, with the city's Communication and Marketing Department. And today we're going to talk about hurricane preparation issues, specifically in terms of public safety. My guest today is Corporal Mary Shackleford. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I noticed, I was with the city and fairly new after hurricane, or at least threatening Hurricane Irene last year. And there were so many issues that came up afterward that I thought maybe today in the bright sunlight with nothing threatening, we could talk about them and then people would be a little more prepared rather than waiting until after the emergency
Certainly.
hit.
Absolutely.
When there's let me talk first of, you're kind of new to the public information side of the police, but
That's
you've
correct.
been with the department for how long?
7.5 years.
Okay. So the kind of questions that came up last year, I think the first one is always about evacuations. People are afraid to evacuate. They want to stay put. There's this very strong feeling that, it's my house and I'm going to stay here and defend it. And during Irene, the city issued a mandatory evacuation for people in that category 1, the lowest lying areas.
Correct.
And the mayor got on and did a personal plea and told people basically, please get out of town.
Certainly.
And that night, I know the city declared a curfew, that people had to be off the streets from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. That was a little unusual for Hampton. We had not done that in previous disasters.
In reference to the mandatory evacuation, those decisions were made because obviously Hampton, we're in a low-lying area, we're right by the water, and roads become impassable very, 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 very quickly. So it makes it very, very difficult for emergency response to get to you. So if you don't leave, there's chances that we may not be able to get to you right away if an emergency does occur until those waters start to recede. In reference to the curfew, one was done for Irene. It was done for one evening from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. And that's to allow for emergency response and police to maneuver along the roads. We'd like citizens to stay off the roads. It's still very, very dangerous. It's very dark. There was no power. Trees were down. Power lines were down. So it allows us to do the rescue efforts without citizens being on the road, and just allows us to maneuver a lot easier.
Well, and it prevented some additional rescue measures,
Certainly.
possibly, because if people are driving through intersections with no lights or driving around when they really, really don't have to be on the roads, it just creates more problems that you guys have to deal with.
Absolutely. We understand people want to check on their property and check on family members, and we absolutely understand that, but until water is able to recede, we ask that they stay away until those evacuations are lifted and they can return to their homes.
Well, the other benefit there, and it's because I was working on the city's social media sites, but people kept thanking us for the curfew because they felt better having left their homes knowing that there was a curfew, knowing that people weren't on the streets. I mean, I know your first job is to protect people, but personal property, having that curfew really helped people's peace of mind.
Absolutely, and we will strategically place officers around businesses and residences and neighborhoods to deter any type of crime that may occur. Unfortunately, individuals try and take advantage of the situation and with vandalisms and trying to break into businesses, but we will place officers around those areas to deter that criminal element.
And I think that was really effective, and obviously it's a little hard to predict what the city would do in the future, but I know that city leaders got a lot of response from citizens that they were grateful for that curfew and that they thought that worked really well. The other thing that keeps coming up, every time there's a large power outage, and it happened again recently, what is the protocol for intersections when there's no traffic light?
Well, first, in Irene and with the recent events of the tornado and the strong storms that we've already had this year, we will deploy officers throughout the city to assist with traffic control. At every major intersection, chances are there's going to be an officer to assist with traffic. And
I know you can put generators if it's particularly if the
exactly.
outage
We've purchased generators so that will immediately go to the major intersections, and then we'll filter them out after that. But if you should come upon an intersection where there is not an officer or a working traffic signal, you need to treat it like a four-way stop and yield appropriately, yield to the right of way.
All right, I'm going to make you say that again because people just don't get it. They think I'm on Mercury Boulevard and that's the main road, and then other people think, oh, I'm on Woodland Boulevard and that's the main road, and they just keep zipping through those.
Right.
So tell us again, Mary.
Again, you need to treat it like a four-way intersection.
Okay.
You need to yield appropriately and yield to the right of way. But chances are at any major intersection like that, Mercury, Woodland, there's going to be an officer out there to assist with traffic control. In any situation like this, we utilize all of our resources. Every officer is called in, and all of our resources are going to be deployed.
It just sometimes takes a little while, actually.
Certainly.
Is part of the issue. And you can't hit the minor intersections. I mean, there are so many intersections in the city that it does become impossible to hit, every cross street on Pembroke.
Correct.
So people do need to remember, just stop. And yes, it's going to take you a lot longer to get somewhere if you have to stop at those intersections. So probably tip number one is just don't go out if you don't have to.
Don't go out. If you could please stay away from the hardest hit areas. I know people want to take pictures and check on property.
Oh, that happened after the tornado. Because I live in Merrimack Shores, and people were just driving through sightseeing.
And it's still very dangerous. I still have power lines down that are active. I have trees down there. Still, still very, very dangerous. And I don't want any additional injuries from people just walking around and taking pictures. So we ask that you stay away from those areas. And people were fairly accommodating when the tornado and the stronger storms that hit earlier this year.
Well, and while the repairs are going on, it's also dangerous. That danger continues because they're putting up new power poles, private companies are topping off trees and taking things down, and the streets are crowded, there's debris piled everywhere. Part of me just wants to say, stay out of the area unless you have a true need. If it's your home, if you're checking on your parents, obviously that's a different matter. But in terms of wanting to see the damage, let's let City Crews post the pictures on the website or on Facebook and look at the photos.
We just ask that you allow some time to make the scene safe before you start going into neighborhoods and seeing the damage. Just allow us to take care of those trees, take care of these power lines, and start working on getting those poles back up.
Now, in terms of flooded roads, because that's always one of the problems, and frankly, we know Hampton is such a low-lying area that it's going to flood in a nor'easter. It flooded a few days ago in a heavy downpour. You've got two kinds of flooding. You've got tidal flooding, and you've got the heavy rains.
Correct.
What are some tips about if I'm driving down the road and I can no longer see the road because all I see is water, what should I do?
People need to understand that, like you said, we are in a low-lying area, so these roads will become impassable very, very quickly. And you really need to pay attention to what we're putting out on 311, on our website, that they will become impassable very quickly. So chances are if you get in, you might not be able to get out. But you do not want to drive through high water because your car will stall and you will be in the middle of the road and you then become a hazard. Chances are you will be struck by another vehicle because they just don't see you. So you need to pay attention to alternative routes, what's being put out over the media. Like I said, what we're putting out on 311 as well as our city website as to what roads will become impassable, because we'll continuously update that.
And it is, you can't always predict. I mean, there are some roads that flood no matter what, but then some are affected by tidal flooding. I know there was a place on Kickotan, that flooded because Sunset Creek backed up and the drainage wasn't good. So sometimes it's drainage, sometimes it's storm, sometimes it's tidal. Some people know which roads are going to flood, and sometimes in Hampton there is no alternate route. I mean, the answer might be just stay where you are for a little while.
If you don't have to go anywhere, please just stay put, sit tight, and you will have hopefully already prepared in terms of additional food and medications and water. And like I said, we've already experienced several extreme storms this summer so far. So citizens,
it's been a crazy year.
It really has. So citizens have done a phenomenal job of being prepared and taking those precautions and working with us a little bit.
Okay, and then just getting back to this decision to evacuate, make it early. Because as you said,
please do, yes.
if it is a big hazard to be out on the roads, I know during Irene there was a point at which the cities of Newport News and Hampton issued a bulletin that said when winds reach X sustained speed, we can no longer send police and firefighters out.
Emergency response was actually halted for a short time while Irene was occurring. And again, if that mandatory evacuation comes out, please don't take it lightly. We ask that you make those decisions quickly and make whatever preparations you need to make, because if that comes out, chances are we cannot get to you, not only for your safety but for our safety as well. We don't have the resources to do that. So please make those decisions early, yes.
And that's why we want to talk about this now, so people can have this in the back of their mind. Sometimes people don't really wake up until the danger is here, and then they're like, oh wow, this is worse than I thought it was going to be.
Right.
Yeah, it is too late. Are there some other tips or things that we should be aware of as we enter the biggest threat time of the hurricane season?
Obviously, if you can, please be prepared. Again, with the additional food and medications and water, please be prepared. If if a storm does occur, again, please stay away from the hardest hit areas. We do have power lines down, we're gonna have trees down, we're gonna have massive power outages. If you don't have to go anywhere, please just stay where you are and just sit tight for us. If you're able to, before the storm hits, if you're able to go onto our city website or go to 311 and look in terms of what we'll be posting, the continuations as they come about. We'll certainly be updating as much as possible.
And Facebook, last time that was really what I used, because so many people can get to that on their phone.
Right.
Like I could send out an e-news, but it took more time and more steps to get
Right.
something posted on the website. So using Twitter and social media and then e-news when we can.
Correct. And we'll be continuously updating in terms of road closures and power outages, and if you could just bear with us and try and pay attention to those things, and which we've done so far. And like we said, we've already had the tornado and a couple of severe storms, and things worked out pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's also the point at which our office is really combined. Like normally, you guys deal with public information when it's a police situation, and my folks do it when it's the rest of the city. But
Right.
when it's a disaster like that, we all become one big communications team and share all those channels and
Right.
really work together to let the citizens and the media, so they can also spread the word,
Right.
know
Well,
what's
absolutely.
going on.
Our citizen safety is obviously our number one priority in any instance like this. It can become very dangerous. In the tornado, we had officers out there going door to door, checking on residences to make sure that they were okay.
Gosh, I know.
They were out there all night long, soaking wet, and they were literally going door to door from neighborhood to neighborhood, making sure that residents were okay and if they needed anything. So we will be out there in full force. We will all be available, and all of our resources will be deployed.
Yeah, you guys are amazing. And I do want to say that was one of the things I noticed after Irene, after the tornadoes, after some of the bad storms, is that people come forward and have really thanked you guys, because you can amass a bunch of people and deploy them efficiently.
Right.
And it felt to citizens really like the police were everywhere. And
Well, we
that's
certainly
such a good
appreciate that.
feeling.
We certainly appreciate that, because the officers, they work extremely hard, especially in the tornado. That night, they were just soaking wet and literally going door to door for residences that had trees fallen on, making sure that everybody was okay. So that appreciation is certainly noted, but we will be out there in full force.
Okay, well, thank you so much for
Thank you
coming
so much
by
for having
today. And I'm just going to recap a couple of the things. If a road is flooded, if you can't see the bottom, don't drive through it.
Correct.
If a traffic light is out, it is your responsibility to stop. Treat that like a four-way stop. Be prepared, and if you need to evacuate, make that decision and do it before it's too late.
Absolutely.
What else, Mary? What am I forgetting?
I think you've covered it all. Just please pay attention and make those decisions early.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And I hope you guys are thinking ahead about hurricanes and are making those plans. And remember, too, a disaster can strike without warning. The good thing about a hurricane, if there is a good thing, is that we typically get, 4 days notice. But when the tornadoes blew through, we got almost no notice. So a disaster can happen anytime, and please stay prepared.